Hey guys, Ramsey here. Welcome to another video. Today we've got a completely outrageous video. I can't believe I'm about to do this. I feel like this video is going to go on for hours. So if you're time constrained, either you're going to have to break this up in parts, or you're going to have to put me on like 1.5 times speed to speed this up, because this is going to be a long one. I'm just warning you right now. And this video this is not a top 10 on the note of Oakmoss. And I have actual Oakmoss Absolute right here, and you can see what it did to the blotter. This is from 2 weeks ago when Russian Adam and I did our live stream. I can still smell this clear as day on the blotter. And this is what real Oakmoss Absolute does to a composition. It fixes it to your skin. It was used as a base, it was used to add texture, it was used to add depth, and this just cannot be recreated. Now, the molecules that they have nowadays to recreate Oakmoss are decent, okay? But this just cannot be recreated. So we're going to do This is not a top 10 Oakmoss video. And if you know the way I do these videos, I basically take fragrances from my collection that have the note, and we talk about them quickly. And I have a ton of fragrances that have this note, obviously. The vintage ones from the 70s and 80s, or 60s, 70s, 80s, whatever you want to call it, are going to be the ones that have the most Oakmoss. So those are going to be price saved to the end. I do have some niche fragrances that use Oakmoss as well. But I have to do Scent of the Day because this is a very special fragrance. My fairy godparent person sent me this. Tiger Lust from the house of Ensar Oud. Oh my God. I mean, I'm almost lost for words, and I told Rich today, I'll tell you what I told Rich Mitch, because this is my true feelings. This makes me feel the way that I felt, the first time I ever smelled Mitsuko, or Shalimar, or, L'air Bleu, something like that, like a true Guerlain masterpiece. Which sounds insane talking about a fragrance that uses Indonesian oud, Chinese oud, Sri Lankan oud, castoreum. It's dirty, it's all this stuff. But the way that all the notes come together, I mean, I'm almost like in awe, in shock. I read some comments before I wore this, and the comments were saying, oh, this smells like someone that doesn't know how to blend but uses great materials. This bullshit. This is an absolute mountaintop experience for a frag head. Once you get to fragrances like Ensar Oud or Arise L'Adore or Bortnikov, where else do you go? I don't know, honestly, if there's anywhere else you can go. Even those $1,000, $10,000, $20,000 Henri Jacques fragrances can't compete with this. They just cannot. So I am just in heaven today. There's no Oakmoss in this one, but just to tell you my scent of the day, and obviously Ensar Oud is a house I would love to dive into more. I just don't have the funds. I can't go spend 5 or 10 grand on, a couple grams of real oud. I just can't do it. But would I love to dive into this house and talk more about it? Absolutely. Sultan Pasha, he makes some special stuff. I totally see why people just sell off their entire collection and try to buy, spend money with him or Arise L'Adore or Bortnikov. I totally see why. All right, we have to get started. This video is literally going to take hours, I think. And so the first one we're going to do is Chypre Palatin. This is from a decade ago. This is Bertrand Duchaufour's, one of Bertrand Duchaufour's masterpieces. It's this Oriental Chypre combination, okay? And it uses this green galbanum, resinous labdanum, clementine. There's beautiful floral notes here, but there's some dirtiness in the base. There's castoreum and all this stuff, leather, Oakmoss, styrax, even Immortelle, which some people don't like, but I think I have no problems with that note. And the second one is going to be Sultinate of Oman. Now, Roja loves using a couple notes. Number one, he loves using labdanum. And number two, he loves using Oakmoss. And so even though this is a scent that's supposed to capture the heart of frankincense, this is his take on frankincense, if you will, Oman is known for their Omani frankincense. And this has that Roja vibe to it, though. It has that May Rose, jasmine from grass, violet. There's even a fruity raspberry note here, but it very quickly devolves into the saffron, the elemi, the oud. There's even some oud along with the frankincense, and of course there is Oakmoss in the base. And so that is Sultanate of Oman. Okay, next we're going to do Reckless Perfume. Now, this is probably one of my least favorite masculine Roja creations. I'm just not a fan. It reminds me a little bit of Clive Christian X, which is on the list. But I actually like X better. This is a little bit of a letdown for me. Now, this is the Eau de Parfum. The Eau de Parfum is discontinued. Now, you can only buy Reckless in the Pure Parfum. And this has this lavender, peppery, clove, cinnamon, pepper, frankincense, oak moss, styrax. Don't go pay crazy money for this, honestly. I would probably just say this is a pass. But I wanted to highlight it since it does have the note. And again, I just basically gave up. I ran out of room. So we're going to cover all the ones I could grab, and then the ones that I have on the list that, you know, are not here. Well, too bad. They're not going to make the video. So next we've got Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. And this is kind of a interesting fruity take. You know, if you wanted to wear one of these Middle Eastern frags in summer and you wanted to be season specific, you could do Kingdom of Saudi Arabia. It is citruses and fruits and florals. There's a strawberry note in here, raspberry, plum, black currant, and banana and apple. So it's very fruity. But there's that familiar Middle Eastern base Roja uses. Ooh, there's even a strange cotton candy note in the base with, of course, oak moss. All right, 2 more Roja decants here, and then we'll get to the full bottles. So next we've got Fortnum and Mason, the Perfume. So FM, the Perfume. And Fortnum and Mason, the Perfume, is basically a fruity floral fragrance. This one is very overlooked because it's for a department store, basically. It's kind of like when he does his Harrods exclusive, but those have been extra boring to me. The ones he did for Harrods and Bergdorf Goodman or whatever, those have been boring. This one's not as boring. This one's much more interesting. It has the cistus labdanum resinousness turned up. He's used like citron fruit and other things in the top, bergamot, stuff like that, with peach. But the base has this resinous vanilla, frankincense, castoreum, labdanum, birch, oak moss, benzoin, patchouli, saffron, and coriander. Very, it probably leans feminine maybe because of that fruity floral aspect, but I love the resinous base here. So would I buy a full bottle? No, I wouldn't, but it is one that deserves probably a little bit more hype than it gets in the community. And then we are going to do, finally, the exclusive Parfum. Terrible name, but this is discontinued apparently. And you can see this decant has gotten some use. This was sent to me by my Perfume God person. And this will remind people of the Moon. Okay, it was released a year or 2 before the Moon came out, but it has that Middle Eastern, Cypriol, elemi, saffron, raspberry vibe. And in the base, there is, of course, a oak moss note to go along with all the other crazy stuff on there. Oud, leather, vanilla. You know, if you like those Middle Eastern type Frederick Malls, check out the exclusive Parfum if you can find a bottle for cheap. All right, let's do the full bottles. So let's do first, we're going to do Fetish. And Fetish is basically Roja's take on Bel Ami, if you will. It has this, Fetish has this smokiness to it that Bel Ami does not necessarily have. There's a lot of elemi resins and benzoin and ambergris, and of course the oak moss in the base. There's even a very interesting fig note but it's almost like a smoky fig, if you will. Very interesting fragrance. I really like that one. I don't care what people say about it. I don't care about if it's hyped or not. So I'm going to reach back and grab these because I'm out of room, like I said. Next is going to be Vetiver by Roja Parfums. And Vetiver is basically his take on a green, fresh, spicy vetiver fragrance. But really, I've said it feels more like a Chypre fragrance. It feels like Roja just made a Chypre, amped up the vetiver a little bit, and called it Vetiver. I would honestly, this is probably my most regretful full bottle buy from Roja. This is the one that I would take back. Give me back my $500. You know, this is one, while it is nice and it's great in an office because it's almost inconspicuous, you know? It's nice, it'll get you some attention, but it's not going to reach out and really, it's not going to reach out like Tiger Lust or anything will and grab somebody. But it is, he uses this floral note called, let's say, a Kubiba, which basically impersonates a lemon bergamot citrus note. And it feels like that citrus opening goes on forever and ever. I smelled it in some of his other department store exclusives. I can't remember which one. It could have been like La Oscar Porum or one of those Harrods Porum. I can't remember exactly which one had this let's say a Kubiba note, which you know, impersonates a floral note that just lasts forever. It's good. It's just not worth the money. Okay, next is one that I do think is worth the money, even though it's insane. It's Roja's Great Britain. And Great Britain is a take on Cuir de Russie. So it's lots of leather, lots of iris, violet, you know, almost like the color of the cap, if you will, that purpley cap color. That's kind of what you get from the violet and iris. And there's a beautiful ambrette note. That's a note that I'm learning I absolutely love and adore, an ambrette note. And then, probably my newest and final Roja purchase. This is Roja's Hot Luxe, or Roja's fragrance for himself. It's a floral, spicy, you know, it will remind you a little bit of Mitsuko. Because, of course, it's a Chypre. He loves Chypre fragrances, and there's tons of ambergris in the base. It smells like it has that, you know, sparkly ambergris pop. There's tons of ylang ylang and jasmine. But somehow he managed to make the base resinous, and this fragrance has really grown on me. Like, go watch my early impression, or I actually did a full review on this fragrance because I have a travel atomizer. I was never planning on buying this. This fell in my lap. And it has tons of labdanum, tons of Oakmoss, and styrax in the base. So that is Roja Hot Luxe. And then probably the one that best encapsulates the Oakmoss note is Diaghilev. Diaghilev is this, it's probably my favorite Roja fragrance, to be honest with you. As much as I love Great Britain, Great Britain would be the one that would contend for the crown. It would probably be Diaghilev, Great Britain, and then, you know, something else third. Maybe Danger, maybe Roja, I don't know which one, but this is top of the list for me because it is this, the way Roja describes it is as a Baroque Chypre. So it's big, it's bold, it's in your face. There is peach. It will remind you a bit of a mixture of Bandy and maybe a mixture of Rochas Femme with Mitsuko. You know, those, maybe a mixture of Azure by Estee Lauder, but it has this unbelievable Oakmoss dry down in the base. Oakmoss is so important to a Chypre fragrance. And it's so dirty. The leather is just right there in your face. The civet is there. It can challenge people if they've never smelled stuff like this before. I think it's a masterpiece. It made my top 10. Okay, next is going to be Danger. And Danger is Roja's take on Guerlain's Heritage. And basically what he's done here is he's amped up the civet and cumin and dirty notes. There is, of course, leather, and he added like a rhubarb note in the base, which isn't in Heritage. And of course, there's oak moss and a little bit of clove and vanilla. But this is so posh. I mean, you know, I love Heritage. Heritage made my top 10 as far as my favorite fragrances of all time. Danger is in that same DNA. I mean, if you smelled Heritage, you'll smell it in Danger. There's no way getting around it. And finally, we've got Oligarch. This is the only full Eau de Parfum bottle I have. Actually, that's not true. I have one other. It's Scandal. Right there. But this is the final one I'm going to do, even though Scandal has Oakmoss too. But Oligarch in Eau de Parfum is discontinued. They now issued it in pure Parfum, so they could triple the price or whatever they're doing. Dirty stuff. But it's a little bit like Terre de Hermes, like a very expensive, posh version of Terre de Hermes with some other things like champaca flower and apple. It's got this fruitiness to it. You'll smell things like strawberries in there, even though they're not listed. You'll smell fruits. You'll smell a leathery base. You'll smell beautiful iris, and of course the oak moss and, you know, birch dry down. It's beautiful. Vetiver, even though Vetiver is not listed, I pick up a Vetiver note. So that's Oligarch by Roja. All right, those are the Rojas. Let's get on to the next niche brand. Let's knock out some of these niche brands before we go to the big old-time vintage masculines everyone's thinking of when they think of oak moss. First is going to be Arolfa. This is one of my favorite fresh Creed fragrances. I like this better than Millésime Impérial. Arolfa reminds me of how aquatic fragrances were done in the late 80s, early 90s, before they went to the super clean aquatics. And I'll show you what I'm talking about later in the video. But Arolfa has this insane mixture of cumin and pepper and citruses and ginger with that melon, aldehydic melon note that Pierre Bourdon loved working with. This has Pierre Bourdon and Edmund Rudnitska written all over it. It smells like Edmund Rudnitska's. It smells to me a bit like a Bourdon take on Rudnitska's Ocean Rain, which is coming up later. But in the base, there's this sandalwood, cedarwood combo that Creed is known for, and of course the oak moss note. And this smells like there is real oak moss in here, although I don't know if there really is. It smells like there is. It is an older bottle, so maybe there is. This bottle is probably a decade old. I don't know, something like that. It still has the fire hose atomizer, that old Creed fire hose atomizer I love so much. It just dumps juice on you. And of course you can't do an oak moss video without Aventus, and the reason this is on here is because this is a Chypre fragrance. Most people don't realize that. This is a fruity Chypre fragrance, and it's got that pineapple note in the top that Pierre Bourdon played with for so long, and then of course taught to his disciples. Jean-Christophe Hérault is the perfumer here, so you get this blackcurrant, rose, pineapple, jasmine, ambergris, cedarwood, oak moss, birch tar, and the dry. The birch is what gives it that smokiness, that smoky pineapple. It's really, it was a revolutionary fragrance at the time. And actually, I think what's missing from this fragrance is the oak moss. Because I think as they reformulated it, the oak moss has made it less and less and less base heavy. So these older bottles, this is a 2014 bottle, and you can see how much I've got left. I mean, just a drop. I decanted some to Rachel so she could smell the vintage. I have 2015, 16, and 17 bottles, so I'm set. But next is an Amouage, and I could have included more than one, but I didn't want this list to go on forever, even though it will. This is called Jubilation 25 by Bertrand Duchaufour. This is that beautiful blackberry, labdanum, Divana, frankincense, honey, immortelle, oak moss, oud, a Papanax myrrh. I mean, you name it, it has it. It's absolutely beautiful. If you want to smell oak moss, like real oak moss, in a niche fragrance, and you can't, you don't want to spend what Diaghilev is, which is ridiculous. I completely understand. Check out New York Intense by the House of Nikolai Perfumers. New York Intense is a beautiful take on a classic masculine DNA. It will remind you a little bit of Chanel's Pour Monsieur, which is one of their flankers is coming up here later. And the base has almost like this guerlanade. Patricia de Nicolai obviously was a guerlain who was pushed aside. She wasn't allowed to participate in the house. And this has this beautiful classic lavender and chamomile and clove opening, but it dries into something a little bit more with some, heft to it. Vanilla, styrax, patchouli, stuff like that. And of course, the Oakmoss in the base. It's absolutely stunning. It's by far her best fragrance, hands down. New York Intense is by far her best fragrance. So check that one out if you get a chance. And then sticking with the niche theme, next we've got Fougère Bengal by the House of Parfum d'Empire. This house I'm smitten with. I absolutely love this house. I can't believe it took me so long to find it. I have never smelled the one that Rich Mitch said sucks. He said he doesn't like Iskander. I've never smelled Iskander. But Amber Rousse is one of the most stunning ambers I've ever smelled. Musk Tonkin, one of the most stunning musks I've ever smelled. Tabak Taboo is absolutely amazing. There's an amazing Immortelle. This has this amazing hay note to it. Hay and tobacco, which, Liz Moore's used that combo or that hay note to give the impression of tobacco in Tobacco Rose, which is a fragrance I absolutely love. This is nothing like that. It's a take on a fougere, but the idea of mixing that hay note in with the tobacco and this animalic, I love the way they do animalics is what it is. Every fragrance has this animalic tinge to it, and I really love it. Musk Tonkin's the most animalic, and that's the one I love the most, go figure. But this has this Oakmoss, patchouli, tonka, and vanilla in the dry down. It's a fascinating fougere. There's even this Assam tea note in the top. So think of all the things I said: tea, animalics, hay, tobacco, patchouli, Oakmoss, vanilla, tonka, lavender. I mean, there's so much going on. I love that house, and great value for money. Okay, now one I just found is discontinued and is absolutely a travesty. It's Pure Distance M, one of my favorite leathers of all time. This is spicy leather with lots of Cistus labdanum and, of course, leather, oak moss. Well, they actually say moss. They don't say oak moss. They just say moss. So it could be some sort of tree moss that's not oak, but Pure Distance M, if you love Bel Ami, which could also have been on this list, I just didn't have time to grab it. Check out Pure Distance M. It is a stunning niche fragrance, and if it truly is discontinued, what a travesty. That will make Roja's Fetish even more valuable. I mean, I know no one wants to spend $500 on a Roja, but I'm telling you, if you want this DNA, get it now. If what Parfumo says is true, the production was apparently discontinued, get it now. I may even look for a backup. Okay, next is going to be a Nichane, the only Nichane on the list. This is Fan Your Flames. I'm not even going to take the bottle out in time, just trying to save some time. It's basically a rum coconut top with tobacco tonka and oak moss and a Chinese cedar note. It's gorgeous in winter. One of the best from Nichane, and I can't wait to get my full bottle of Sultan Vetiver from Rich Mitch. Oh, God. Tiger Lust is... My God. What an amazing fragrance. I mean... I wish I had just an unlimited budget to try all the Ensar Ouds, because I am smitten with this brand like that. That really took me. Okay, next is going to be... Sorry, there's going to be a lot of bending down here. Next is going to be from the house of Clive Christian. This is X for men. Now, when I looked up the name, they changed the name on the bottle, which is hilarious to me. So this is X. This is the old bottles, obviously. Look at the bottom right here. X Perfume Creation, whatever. Clive Christian, whatever. The new one says, here's what the new bottle says. Listen to this. X Clive Christian, the masculine perfume of the perfect pair. And the women's version is X, for women, the feminine perfume of the perfect pair. What the hell are they doing? I don't know what the House of Clive Christian is doing, but I'm not a fan of the house, to be honest with you. This is it. I mean, once I go through these three, number 1, 1872 for men and X for men, and then I have a bottle of C, which I'll show you right now. C is the take on Tuscan leather. In the ostrich box, me lord. And there's C in its little silk bed. This is definitely the strongest Clive Christian fragrance I've ever smelled. One of the strongest fragrances I've ever smelled. But look at the dent I put in this. I love this stuff. It is also apparently discontinued according to Parfumo. And this is Tuscan leather to the T with an oud note listed, although I don't get any extra oud. And cardamom, labdanum, TreeMoss is the note that they list, which could be anything: leather, tobacco, tonka, frankincense. But if you like Tuscan leather and you can get yourself a bottle of C before it goes insane, check it out. Okay, next. Next, we are going to do one of the best. If you said, Ramsey, can you pick one indie or niche Oakmoss fragrance for me to try? This is it. It's called Chypre Siam by the House of Rogue. Look at the color of the juice. That's what real Oakmoss Absolute does to a composition. This has this Kefir lime note, and if you've ever had like Thai food, they use a lot of Kefir lime. So it's Kefir lime and basil with jasmine absolute, ylang ylang, Oakmoss Absolute, real Oakmoss Absolute. Sandalwood, benzoin, leather, civet, and spices. One of the best up-and-coming niche houses, indie houses I've ever smelled. This guy was a chef who just loves perfume and decided, hey, making food is kind of dosing ingredients. Maybe I'll try my hand at perfume. This is absolutely stunning. If you're a Chypre lover, if you love stuff like Roja Parfums, Mitsuko, all that stuff, check out Chypre Siam. It is absolutely amazing. And one of the most, just an amazing value for money too. I don't think these are too expensive. And you can really smell what real Oakmoss Absolute in a composition smells like. Now, this next one is probably their most popular from the house. This is just listed as TreeMoss, but as you can see, the logo actually is a logo of Oakmoss. There's the logo of Oakmoss, and it's called Mousse Illuminée from the House of Rogue. And this is this spicy green. This one's probably their most popular seller for whatever reason, but it's not my favorite of the line. I much prefer Chypre Siam. But this is a great representation of what, this fluffy, powdery Oakmoss does to a composition. Cloudy, it's almost like you're sleeping on a cloud of moss here. There is this white musk, cypress, white blossoms, artemisia, bay leaf, frankincense. It has this old school, like, I don't know what you would call it. Maybe like this old school, like barber, like, they just put something on after giving you a fresh shave vibe. But it doesn't smell like an old style fougere. It doesn't smell like Fougere Royale or anything like that. It's completely different. But it gives that same sharp impression, of freshness. They also have one called Bon Monsieur, which is, I also could have listed, but I didn't in the spirit of time. But if you want to check that one out, Bon Monsieur is an amazing fougere, one of my favorites. Okay, next, from the House of Russian Adam, Marie Ladore, this is War and Peace. And War and Peace, here's the note breakdown. So it's basically this rose combination with castoreum, which I love. And there's a note of Vetiver Absolute and Indian Oakmoss in War and Peace that is just stunning. And of course the civet, the animalics, the ambers. One of my favorite Russian Adam fragrances of all time. I think he said he created this when he was waiting to see what he thought. He ordered a decant of Jedi from Guerlain from 1926, and he made this thinking maybe this is what Jedi smells like. And what a creation. I mean, absolutely insane. This is so good. If you like animalics, but you want something that I think is wearable, I mean, hell, I think this Tiger Lust I'm wearing today is wearable, but War and Peace is just a stunner, a stone cold stunner to me. Okay. Next is Equipage. This is the vintage bottle. Not my favorite fragrance. It's a Guy Robert and has this aldehydic clary sage rosewood thing with loads of carnation, a little bit of pine needles. It will give you the vibe you're standing outside, you know, you're outdoors, that kind of thing, with Oakmoss, Vetiver, patchouli, and vanilla in the base. Not bad. And then the final niche fragrance on this list is going to be Salome. This is kind of like the, you know, the piece that most closely resembles something like Bala Versailles or Diaghilev or something like that. It's this animalic, spicy sex on the skin, is the way Liz Moore's put it. There's a Hyrax note in here, which is a very hard note to work with. Hyrax is extremely tough. Most perfumers don't even try nowadays. But I love Hyraceum when it's used properly. One of the best examples of a perfumer who knows what she's doing using Hyrax with Oakmoss, Styrax, and of course a bunch of other stuff. Carnation, jasmine, bergamot, stuff like that. So Salome is stunning, especially if you like animalic fragrances. Okay, we are a quarter of the way done, so we're going to have to hurry up. Next, we are going to do, from the house of Cartier, this is Pasha. So this is a vintage Pasha. You can see the small ingredient list on the bottom that just basically says contains alcohol, fragrance. That's it. And this is a fougere. This is their take on a fougere. It's got lavender, thyme. There is a little bit of mintiness in the opening, which is kind of strange, I must admit. But it doesn't last long. It really devolves into the rosewood, patchouli, labdanum, oak moss. Loads of oak moss in these old fougères and old Chypres. And so Pasha is an amazing one to check out if you like the old style masculine fougères. Spicy, woody. Speaking of spicy, this is Declaration. This is Jean-Claude Elena's love letter to Eau de Hermes. And Declaration is birchwood, orange, bergamot, mugwort, cardamom, lots of cardamom, cedar, lots of cedar, with vetiver and oak moss. It's an updated take on Eau de Hermes, which is my favorite. Edmund Rudnitska could easily have been on this list if I can't remember if there's oak moss in Eau de Hermes. I would think there is, but I didn't check. And then we're going to go to the House of Ungaro. This is the original Ungaro Pour L'Homme, #1, my favorite of all three. There's the insane note breakdown on the back if you feel like pausing it and trying to read that. But in a nutshell, this falls into the category of late 80s, early 90s fragrances I love so much. Very masculine. There's some lavender, carnation, geranium, rose, oak moss, musk, tonka. It's just absolutely a stunner. My favorite from the bunch. This one's not bad, but it's not my favorite. It's Ungaro Pour L'Homme 3. I think this was the most popular of the bunch. I think it might even be still available for purchase. I don't know. It's Francois Demachy, Jacques Polge. They did all of them, by the way. All the Ungaros they did. Ungaro contracted their perfume creation out to Chanel. And so this is lavender, vodka, mahogany, geranium, rose, oak moss, musk, patchouli, sandalwood, vetiver, and cedar. You know, that vodka rose thing is kind of what puts people off, but it is a good fragrance all in all. Okay, next is going to be the original Tom Ford for Men, which is discontinued. Shocking that it's discontinued, but it is. This is an amazing fragrance for summer for me. It's so much going on. There's citruses, there's tobacco absolute in here, but it's not a heavy tobacco. It's light, it's ethereal. There's cedar, oak moss, leatherwood, cypriol, a light fragrance with cypriol. Who would have thought it? And then we're going to do a modern designer. This came out in 2015, and it's Dunhill's Icon. I absolutely love this stuff. I think this is one of the best values. If you have 40 bucks in your pocket, buy Dunhill Icon if you want a good designer scent. It's got this Neroli Absolute, which is an expensive ingredient. Neroli Absolute is not cheap. With Petitgrain, cardamom, beautiful lavender, sage, but it's that iris and oud. There is an oud note in this, but don't let that put you off. It's like one of the freshest oud. It's more of a backbone note, I think, with Oakmoss and Vetiver. But, I mean, Carlos Benaim hit it out of the park with this, I think. I think it's highly underrated. Even though it got some hype when it came out, it put Dunhill back on the map, it's still underrated. Okay, now, 2018, this little bad boy came out. Aramis Tobacco Reserve. This is tobacco with Oakmoss, iris, and this fruity blackcurrant. It's amazing. This is one of my favorite tobacco fragrances of all time, honestly. It is so good. And I think the perfumer is Edward Fleischier, according to Fragrantica, who I need to do a perfumer's portfolio video on him soon. Oh, God. But, yes, just stunning stuff. And then we go to the original Lacoste from '84. Green, fresh, lavender, carnation, oak moss. It smells like a country club. It smells like you're golfing at a high-end country club, wearing your Lacoste shirt with a little alligator right here. You know, it's just 80s in a bottle. It's like the green color you see right here. That's what you get. It's absolutely stunning. For a bright sunny day, you can't go wrong with Lacoste Original if you want to smell vintage. And then we're going to go to Lacoste Land, which came out in the early 90s. And here's the insane bottle. Look at that. Lacoste Land. Let me see if I can show you the bottom without spilling it. There you go. Okay, so Lacoste Land is... I believe Jean Carlio worked on these Lacoste fragrances when he was at Jean Patou, the House of Patou. And this is this Petitgrain, Neroli, Oakmoss Absolute in the heart, sage, musk, Lauvage, rose, nutmeg, benzoin. It's spicy. You know, it will almost remind you a little bit of like a green take on something like Declaration, Eau de Hermes, something like that. It's that spicy, you know, vetiver, nutmeg, stuff like that. Beautiful, beautiful fragrance for men. They market it as like a sports fragrance. And then one that I just got yesterday in my haul, I wore it to bed last night, and I was absolutely floored. I love this stuff already. This is Caesar's Man Legendary Cologne Spray. Now, the old bottles say Legendary Cologne Spray on them right here. And they've got, you know, Caesar on the cap. And the new bottles don't. They just say Caesar's Man Cologne Spray. So you want the one that says Legendary Cologne Spray. If you can't find the one that says Legendary Cologne Spray, rumor is don't even bother with it. Just skip it. It's rosemary, vervain, bergamot, lavender. Beautiful lavender. Creamy, like... You know, like you blended lavender and ice cream, but without the vanilla. Don't think vanilla ice cream. Think of like a blended milkshake, you know, vibe, or a soft ice cream vibe. That's what the lavender feels like in here. It's so smooth. With fir balsam, patchouli, oak moss, and sandalwood. It's stunning. Maybe it's the sandalwood that's giving it that vibe. I'm not sure. Excuse me whilst I hydrate. Okay, my God, we have so much to do. I can't believe I decided to do this video. I must be out of my mind. Okay, next is going to be Drakkar Noir. And Drakkar Noir is this spicy, woody dihydromercenol. You know, this is actually like a continuation of this. And Rich Mitch said he doesn't like this. I like Drakkar Noir. I might like this even more. I don't know. But Drakkar Noir, Oakmoss, of course, leather in the base, vetiver, that dihydromercenol feel, the smell of the 80s, one of the most popular fragrances of the 80s. They also came out with this, which is called Horizon by Guy Laroche. And I don't know if you can see, but down at the bottom, it actually says that this is a Cosmere bottle. So this is a vintage Cosmere bottle from the early 90s, middle 90s, aquatic, fresh. But what's interesting about this is there's this green take to it. So even though you get this sea salt fresh vibe to it, I wouldn't call this an aquatic. I mean, it is an aquatic, obviously. Look at the bottle, you know, but there's so much more going on. There's this fennel-like smell that comes with Artemisia, bay leaf, pimento. I mean, very masculine, traditionally 80s masculine notes with that sea salt, you know, aquatic vibe, if you will. And then let's go back to the early 80s. This is Balenciaga's Portitos. Now, I've got a full bottle of this coming. I know I said I can't wait till Nishane's Sultan Vetiver arrives from Rich Mitch. This is also arriving, a full bottle of Portitos, which is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. It made my top 100. Oh my God. It is just, if you know Al Manzano, this was his signature scent, and I can totally see why. This is absolutely one of the best castoreum fragrances you'll smell, but it also has that greenness, that Artemisia, labdanum, myrrh, frankincense, leather, and of course moss. Who knows what kind of moss? They don't say, just moss, but there is some moss accord in the dry down. And this is very similar to me. I've got 10 bottles of this Aigner Silver, and I've got, these are supposed to be 10 ml, these little mini 10 ml bottles. It is almost like a more wearable, woodier, maybe even like a little bit greener take on Portitos, because this has a spruce note. Spruce is a very rare note to come across. It's in Oriental Velours by Les Indemodables, and it's here as well. So you get this spruce, woody. You still keep the castoreum and labdanum and leather and moss, but they've done some different things to it. It came out a couple years later. I can totally see Portitos inspiring Etienne Aigner Silver. Okay, next we're going to go to an Escada for men, which all Escadas for men are discontinued. This is Casual Friday. Duncan got upset that I compared this to Le Male, and I completely know why he is upset, because Le Male is shit. This is not shit, though. This is Le Male perfected. This is what Le Male should have been. This is the best DNA of Le Male. Like, if you want to take that DNA, that lavender vanilla thing, and do it properly, you would get this. Dominique Ropion made this. You know he doesn't make bad perfumes, unless it's an Amouage Attar. We won't go there. This is tarragon, anise, carnation, cinnamon, cardamom, oakmoss, vanilla, patchouli, cedar. It's a great designer. Is it worth the $250 that it's going for nowadays? No, it's absolutely not. But if you want to just good designer from the past, that's one to take a look at. Okay, now I said I would tell you the ones that are true Oakmoss. I mentioned this is like Oakmoss in a bottle. This and Mousse Illumine, these two. If you want to see what real Oakmoss does, check those out. This is in the same category, Vintage Puig. This is Oakmoss in a bottle, Vintage Antonio Puig Quorum. So Quorum's the fragrance, Puig is the house. My God, this is Oakmoss and tobacco. I mean, look at the color scheme. How 80s is that? I mean, it just screams 80s. Plaid couches, you know, shoulder pads, elbow pads, spicy, leathery, tobacco, Oakmoss, tons of Oakmoss, loads of Oakmoss. Enough Oakmoss to maybe give you a rash. That kind of Oakmoss. It is Oakmoss on top of Oakmoss. Now, a couple years later, they came out with a Chypre fragrance that also has a ton of Oakmoss in it. It's Sybaris. And so this is Alberto Morillas and Rosendu Matu, rest in peace. This is cumin. There's lots of cumin in the opening with basil, orange and lemon, cinnamon and carnation, artemisia, sandalwood, leather, frankincense, patchouli, and of course, moss. And so that is Puig Sybaris. Okay, now we're going to get to a couple of quote-unquote aquatics. This one I got yesterday in the haul from my unboxing video. It's an Aramis fragrance, and it's called New West. Now, I've slept on this fragrance for a long time because it's an aquatic, right? And I don't like aquatic fragrances, right? Isn't that what you would think? This is not an aquatic fragrance. This is a spicy fragrance with some freshness to it. So it's more about the caraway, mugwort, lavender, bay leaf, pine, oak moss, leather. My wife smelled this a couple hours into me wearing it. I wore it to bed last night, along with legendary cologne, Caesar's Man on one wrist and this one on the other wrist. And she said she got leather from this. It smelled like an old leather chair, she said. I said, really? You don't smell any of the marine notes, any of the aquatics? Nope, she said. So I like this. I mean, this is an aquatic I can wear. Would I wear cool water? No, probably not. This, though, I'm digging this. And this was $18 I paid for this 100 ml. What a value. Value for money is through the roof. Thank you to Schlonghammer. All right, next, we're going to go to a hard-to-find, little bit of a unicorn, Edmund Rudnitska, his final fragrance. This is Edmund Rudnitska's final fragrance in 1990. It's called Ocean Rain by the house of Mario Valentino. And this is another aquatic I discovered this year that I absolutely love. And I don't love aquatics. This fragrance is, you know how the opening of Eau de Hermes and the vintage bottles of Eau Sauvage will challenge you a little bit. There's that dirty cumin, just dirtiness. This has this degradation, this rot, this desiccated. That's the word that I would use with this. This is desiccated. It's green. The balsam fir and thyme and lavender and oak moss. There's leather in this as well. But there's also marine notes in this as well. But this is another one where you might have a hard time picking out the marine facets. I mean, this is maybe a little bit, I don't know. It's just Edmund Rudnitska's DNA in a bottle. I mean, this is the fragrance he wanted to make. He didn't care. He didn't turn the cologne note up to 10,000 like they started to do in the 90s because that's what people were asking for. He just made the fragrance he wanted to make, and that's that. And I love this stuff. This is one of the best. These two, I'll just show them both. These two are two of the best aquatics I've purchased ever in my life. I mean, the other one I already showed. This is it, Arolfa. Here's my 3 favorite aquatics, I think. There you go. And they're all on this list with oak moss in an aquatic. Very, very unusual, I would say. But I love the way that they did. I love the way that they did these fragrances. They're very unique. Okay. Now we're going to jump to the classic 80s style I love so much. This is Salvador Dali Pour Homme. This is 1987. Oh, God. Thierry Vasser's best work, I think. I love this stuff. It is Animalic. There's civet, although there's no civet note listed. I get a huge civet note. It is moss, geranium, patchouli, a little bit of vanilla, a little bit of sweetness, but it's almost like a spicy Animalic take on a fougere, if you will. Look at the dark green bottle. It's there. And then we're going to do Salvador by Salvador Dali. Same house, but instead of 87, this is 92. This came out. And this is the great Gerard Anthony with Elias Hermendis. And this is Sunshine in a Bottle is what Scentland calls this. Sunshine in a Bottle. And I know what he means. If you watch my first impression of Boss Spirit, this is in the same range as Boss Spirit. It has that bright aldehydic opening with huge amounts of green notes. All kind of green notes. Think of a green note, it's here. Tarragon, coriander, caraway, oak moss. There's all kind of this green leafy feel, but But then it's about the spices, and it's about the leather in the base. And Boss Spirit is about the leather in the base too. But it's just amazing. It's just, I mean, this kind of perfumery nowadays, you would have to spend huge amounts of money for. You know, the artisticness of this is off the scale. All right, next we're going to go to the house of Jacques Bogart. And this is called Furio. One of my favorite fragrances of all time. I have 6 bottles of this stuff. It's actually the one I have the most bottles of. Kouros is next with 4. But that's because I got a bunch of these for 27 bucks. Spicy, Animalic, Ambrette. One of the best Ambrette notes I've ever smelled, with lavender, carnation, geranium. That'll smell like you're smelling rose, but I don't think there's any rose in here. I think it's that carnation, geranium spiciness that comes about. With Oakmoss, civet, musk, patchouli, vanilla, and amber. And this stuff is tenacious. One of the most tenacious fragrances of all time. Oh, God. Maybe just as tenacious as Tiger Lust, honestly. I mean, which, by the way, Tiger Lust, it's on hour 8 dry down on my left hand. And it is just ticking along. It's just going through all these different aspects still, even in hour 8. God. What a fragrance. Okay. Next, we're going to do Caron's Yatagan from 1976. One of the best castoreum fragrances of all time. It smells like dirty forest floor, you know, decomposing leaves and pine and vetiver. And of course, there's oak moss and leather in the base. It's just masculine perfumery in the 70s done correctly. And of course, a couple years later, in 1985, Caron came out with this little beauty. This is called Third Man. Caron Third Man. This is the vintage bottle. The new bottle looks like this, you know. And this is one of the best clove fragrances money can buy. I've shown this off before. This is a tester, so I don't have a cap. But this is clove, lavender, bergamot, mandarin orange, lemon, oak moss, and vetiver. And it's just so classy. So just classic masculine. I absolutely love it. And then a bottle I've got a backup coming in the mail right now. This is Caractère by Daniel Hector. Caractère is totally backup bottle worthy. This is something I really fell in love with. Oh, God. 1989. Feels like it should have came out in 81. It's basil, artemisia, bergamot, carnation, castoreum, oak moss, leather, and cedar. I think Manly Scents said that this smells like you're sitting on a couch in a leather couch in the middle of the woods. It's just beautiful, though. And then we're going to go to one of the most classic, one of the most influential leather fragrances of all time. This is Bandit by the house of Robert Piguet. And Bandit is all about leather, aldehydic leather with galbanum, castoreum. It's just one of the most butch leathers you'll ever smell, ever. It just, hi, I'm a leather fragrance. And that, I mean, look at the bottle. This is for women. No mess, no fuss, just straight square bottle with the name of the house on the cap, and that's that, and a little sticker. Just, hi, I'm a smoky Animalic leather. You like it? You like it or not? It's just amazing. I love Bandit. Too bad this version is discontinued. This is the Eau de Toilette, I believe. I think this is the Eau de Toilette vintage. And it's just an icon of leather perfumes. Okay, I think we're halfway through. Let's get a move on, shall we? I hope you guys are watching this on like double speed. All right, next is Moschino pour Homme. Discontinued. Some compare it to Bel Ami. I prefer Bel Ami. It's like an Italian style on Bel Ami. It has this lavender, carnation, leather, labdanum, styrax, castoreum, and of course, oak moss. But it is a leather fragrance. And spicy leather. I like it. I just prefer Bel Ami. All right, next is going to be Halston Z14. One of the most iconic fragrances. Tom Ford's favorite fragrance, basically. Z14 was the smell of his youth. Spicy, woody. Oh, this is so good, though. I mean, one of the best. He created Italian Cypress to give an homage to Z14. Cypress, which I wish they used more in perfumery. Patchouli, cinnamon, geranium, leather, moss, frankincense, musk. It's just 70s in a bottle. This is what people wore to the discotheques in the 70s, apparently. I love this smell. I absolutely love this fragrance, and I've got 2 bottles of it. And then another discontinued, can't believe they discontinued Halston Z14 and Halston 112. I've got the bigger bottle of 112. Spicy green, basil, carnation, pine, juniper, oak moss, labdanum, vanilla, cedar. It smells very, there's lots of florals, and it, you know, people thought this smelled a little bit too feminine back in the day, I read, because of the jasmine and the carnation and stuff like that, but there's this green, almost like fougere touch, if you will, you know, like a fougere meets oriental, you know, something weird like that, but it works. It's absolutely stunning. 112 is highly underrated. And speaking of highly underrated from the House of Halston, this is Catalyst. My God, what a masterpiece. Even the beaker scientific, you know, test tube bottle is absolutely stunning. Elias Armendis and Harry Fremont, 2 perfumers who know what the hell they're doing. There's everything in this. And this is a Roja Dove note listing. Mint, rose, vodka, orange, caraway, tarragon, galbanum, lavender, narcissus, tuberose, geranium, grass, chamomile, bay leaf, lily of the valley, nutmeg, violet, cinnamon, blackcurrant, rose, amber, benzoin, oak moss, castoreum, leather, labdanum, sandalwood, tonka, vetiver, frankincense. Wow. Just a banger of a fragrance. Total niche quality, if there is such a thing. And I mean, if Roja Dove came out with this is $500 a bottle. Easily 500 bucks a bottle. Unless he wants to put a purple cap on it, and then he can sell for $1,000. You know, just complete and utter amazing perfumery. This is amazing perfumery for men. And it came out in the mid-90s when everyone else was doing an aquatic. Halston said, screw you guys, I'm going to do whatever I want, and he did. I respect that. All right, next is going to be Perry Ellis Cologne for Men. Make sure you get the one that says cologne. If you get Perry Ellis Eau de Toilette, you're going to earl. It's horrible. Leathery, spicy. This is leather, clove, moss, galbanum, bergamot with, I detect cumin, although there's no cumin listed. And then go watch my interview with Anuja's buddy, the distributor of this, Mr. Maison. Go watch my interview with Mr. Maison, who distributed this fragrance back in the 80s. This is Canon Cologne. This stuff is, wow. I can't believe how good this is. I mean, I cannot believe that this was a cheapy fragrance. It smells high class, it's woody, it's spicy. The florals and the vanilla in the base almost make it seem like a Guerlain, if that makes sense. You know, Guerlain had Abbey Rouge at the time, and the way that this fragrance, I mean, it was also in the 60s. I think this came out a couple years after Abbey Rouge. I think this was inspired by Abbey Rouge. They did their own thing, of course. There's no frankincense or stuff like that in Abbey Rouge, but there's no honey in Abbey Rouge. There's honey here, but this is amazing stuff. I need to wear this soon before it gets too cold. So Canon for men. And then we're going to go to a Dior for women. This is called Dune from 1991. And this is the Christian Dior bottle, the vintage Christian Dior bottle. This is so good. Dominique Ropion, Jean-Louis Suizac, 2 master perfumers, if you will. Dune is stunning fragrance. It feels like there's some frankincense in here, although there isn't any. It's this Brazilian rosewood, peony, Very few fragrances that do the note of peony right. It's beautiful here. Jasmine, lily, rose, ylang with ambergris, patchouli, sandalwood, vanilla, oak moss, and musk. Beautiful. One of the all-time great women's fragrances. It's climbing on my favorite women's fragrances chart, I'll tell you that. Okay, next, we're going to do Gray Flannel. Al Manzano's other signature scent from 1975. The first hour of these older bottles, the first hour or two, I would say, of these older bottles of Gray Flannel are transfixative with how beautiful they are. The opening is, you know, almost picture-perfect countryside, beautiful, just every plant you could imagine on rolling hills. That's what the opening of Gray Flannel is to me, and these vintage bottles. The iris, the mimosa, the narcissus, the geranium, the rose, the sage, the violet. Look at all the florals I just talked about. But there's also this green galbanum. The violet is a little bit petrol-y. This probably is what inspired Dior's Fahrenheit with the petrol violet note, violet leaf. And then the base is unique because yes, it's oak moss, yes, it's tonka, yes, it's vetiver and cedar. There's an almond note in here. Decades and decades before Thierry Vasser used it in L'Homme Ideal. It's so good. The kids who laugh at this have no clue what they're talking about. Absolutely no clue. Gray Flannel is a legend. And the reformulations have not been kind to that fragrance, so if you can get an older bottle, do it. Okay, next is going to be another discontinued vintage, spicy, leathery Chaps. Now, this is a Warner bottle of Chaps. Warner or Cosmere, doesn't matter. I would say just get whichever one you can get. This is so good. I love this stuff. This was the alternative for someone that didn't want to spend money on Polo Green or Safari, which I easily could have included in this list. I just ran out of space. Polo Green should be on the list for Oakmoss. Safari for men should be on the list for Oakmoss. This has this Oakmoss leathery dry down that's just to die for. Somehow, either the mixture of spices, vanilla, sandalwood, somehow it has this powderiness to it. That I think puts some people off, but it's a beautiful fragrance. And, you know, I grew up smelling that on men, so I'm sure, you know, I've got some scent memories attached to it, and I probably don't even know about it. Okay, next, we're going to go to Abenita by the House of Molinard. This is the vintage Eau de Toilette, which is discontinued. This came out in 88, I think. They came out with this Eau de Toilette version in 88. It's now discontinued. Now you can only get the Eau de Parfum. Oh, God. This is so good. I mean, resinous, mastic. Think of sticky resins, oriental spicy sticky resins, nutmeg, ylang, heliotrope, rose centrifolia, cedarwood, amber, oak moss, musk, patchouli, sandalwood, and vanilla. It is so, so good. I love this stuff. I'm just glad to have had the opportunity to try it. And then we're going to go to the House of Wheel. I don't know how you say that. How do you say that? Wheel? Vial? But the name of the fragrance is called Kipling. My God, Kipling, leathery, spicy, traditional fougere with this leather moss dry down that is just to die for. My neighbor actually gave me a compliment wearing this one day, which, to be quite fair, I mean, the fragrance is stunning and I was loving it all day, but to get a compliment from, you know, a guy my age or younger on a fragrance that is older than he is pretty amazing, but there you have it. And then we're going to go to the House of Jacques Bogart again. This is from 1975. This is Bogart's signature. Now, this is a vintage bottle, but even the modern stuff is good. Rosemary, birch, provincial lavender, cedarwood, clove, tree moss with this Russian leather note. And that Russian leather note is spot on perfect. If you like fragrances like Paco Rabanne pour Homme, check out Bogart signature. It's amazing. And finally, on the table anyways, before we go down below, we've got Chilanga. Now, Chypre from the house of Balenciaga is a spicy Chypre fragrance from 1973. Beautiful blackcurrant, clove, iris, jasmine, lily of the valley, rose, ylang with oakmoss, patchouli, sandalwood, vetiver, and cedar. If you like those old style Chypre fragrances, which I absolutely adore, Chypre is on that list. It has to be on the list. Huge amounts of oakmoss and beautiful sandalwood in the dry down. Just amazing. I mean, nothing feminine about this. This is just a beautiful creation. Beautiful. Okay, next we're going to go, I'm going to start reaching down for these, so pardon me. But this is Diorella in the vintage houndstooth bottle, which is what they call this bottle. Diorella is a Edmund Rudnitska creation. It has that melon cologne note that, you know, to be quite frank, was way ahead of its time. And he mixed it with this floral Chypre fragrance, honeysuckles in here, carnations in here, peaches in here, oak moss in the base, loads of oak moss in the base, musk, patchouli. Amazing Chypre fragrance. Diorella is, the vintage bottles are definitely one to check out. And you can see I've got just a little bit of juice left. And then we're going to go back in time to 1969. This is Dior Essence. This is my favorite of all of the Dior Dior Essence, Diorama, Diorissimo. This is my favorite, Dior Essence. Guy Robert created this one. Actually, I think this is my favorite Guy Robert creation. I like this even more than Equipage, even more than Kalesh, you know, all that stuff. This is just amazing. Aldehydic, carnation, ylang, cinnamon, but it's that resinous base that really got me. Yes, this is a floral Chypre, but it has this resinous benzoin, styrax, vanilla, oak moss. So good. Dior Essence by Dior. And then, man, this is never gonna end. We've got Gucci Nobile. Gucci Nobile is a unicorn. Bottles are going for $800 online. Do not pay $800 online. But this is one of my picks for moss. This is one of my picks. So if you want to smell an amazing oak moss, check out Gucci Nobile. It has this lavender, very classic masculine, you know, upstanding. There's even this tobacco note that's not listed. Moss, patchouli, sandalwood, cedar. It's just amazing. Sorry, I'm getting worn out here. It's an hour and 8 minutes in, but we're going to finish this, damn it. Next is Youth Dew. And Youth Dew is one of the greatest... Oh, God. Actually, this is one of my picks for amazing. If you want to smell one of the best oak mosses you can get your nose on, get a bottle of Youth Dew. Especially if you can get an older bottle. It's just... oh, fuck. It's so good. It's, you know, it's decades before opium. Josephine Catapano created an absolute stun. This is what our grandmothers smelled like, and they smelled absolutely amazing. Tolu balsam, frankincense, Peru balsam, oak moss, vetiver, patchouli. It's just, you know, I love this stuff. I absolutely love this stuff, and I look forward to the, you know, usually wear this in the cooler weather. It's just beautiful. Okay, next, we're going to stick with the house of Estee Lauder. We're going to go to Lauder for men. Now, here's how you tell the difference of older and new bottles. The new bottles have this green on the outside here and gold on the top. The old bottles are gold all over the cap. And they don't have all the writing down below here. It just says, like, you know, this is cut this off, basically. Spicy, woody, you know, this is a fragrance I'm a little bit torn on, because I think it's a great fragrance, but it's not my favorite style. Okay, if that makes, excuse me, if that makes sense. There is a beautiful amber and Oakmoss in the base, but there is sage, patchouli, sandalwood, vetiver in the heart, and a top of lemon and mandarin orange. Beautiful fragrance, but it's not my favorite. I'm glad to have a bottle, but I usually don't reach for it so often. All right, let's do some Chanel's. Chanel deserves to be on this list. Actually, before we do Chanel, let's do Knowing. So this is Knowing by the house of Estee Lauder. And this is an amazing floral Chypre as well, with plum, mimosa, tuberose, rose. If you like fragrances like Dior's Poison, check out Knowing. Knowing is an amazing Chypre, like I said. Jasmine, orange blossom, patchouli, oakmoss, sandalwood, and vetiver. My favorite from the house is going to come at the very end because it's one of my favorite oakmoss heavy fragrances. Okay, now let's do Chanel. So next we've got Chanel number 19, which needs no introduction. This is a vintage bottle of Chanel number 19. One of the most amazing galbanum fragrances you can smell, with iris, florals, oak moss, leather. I mean, it's a stunning green, you know, bone dry in the opening too. I don't know how they did it, but bone dry in the opening is just stunning. And then my favorite Chanel, period, is Antaeus. Antaeus is the Darth Vader. Just absolutely stunning fragrance, beautiful, masculine. What I think of, if I had a signature scent, this would be in the running. This could be it even. I'm a big Raider fan. This was Al Davis's signature scent, and I could totally see why. It's got that myrrh, clary sage, but it's all about the castoreum. Castoreum and oak moss, labdanum, patchouli. It's just stunning. All right, next is going to be Chanel Pour Monsieur Concentré. Now, the Concentré came out in '89, and it has that Chanel DNA in a sense, but it turns up some of the spices and the resin. So whereas the regular Chanel Pour Monsieur EDT from '55 turns to like bleach on many people's skins, mine included, and it lasts like 30 minutes. This lasts much longer. It turns up the Papanax, the resins, the oak moss. The oak moss here is amazing. Real oak moss in the concentrate. Now, this is discontinued. They reformulated it and called it the Eau de Parfum. They smell very similar, but this has the real oak moss. The Eau de Parfum has the modern replacement. And then finally, we're going to do Cristal. Cristal Eau de Parfum by Chanel. And this is another cold green, you know, almost like there's some smoke in the air. You know, there's no frankincense or anything like that, but there is this heavy greenness to the fragrance. Hyacinth, cold hyacinth, you know, professional hyacinth is what I think of when I see this fragrance, when I smell this fragrance. Glad to have it, but it's honestly not my favorite. Okay. Next, we're going to do some Aramis fragrances. And we've got Aramis by Aramis, 1964. Bernard Chant's masterpiece. One of the best masculine fragrances of all time. Oh my God. Every time I smell it, it just gets me. Clover, thyme, clove, orris, jasmine, cardamom, TreeMoss, castoreum, leather, sandalwood, patchouli, musk, vetiver. If you can find the one that says cologne on it, do it. Do it. Next is going to be, what is next? Aramis 900. Aramis 900 Herbal Cologne. This is a vintage bottle, but I hear the modern stuff is still quite good. But the vintage has the castoreum turned up. So if you're looking for the dirtiness, I'm sorry, I said castoreum, civet turned up. If you're looking for that dirtiness, that heavy, you know, animalic facet that mixes with the rose and the orris and the rosewood, try and find yourself a vintage bottle. You will not be disappointed. One of my favorite rose fragrances of all time. And then we are going to go to Devon. And this is Devon Country Eau de Cologne Natural Spray. Devon is Bernard Chant's take on number 19, I think. Or you could also say it was his take on alliage, if you will. But this is galbanum, aldehydes, mugwort, lavender, carnation, stone pine needles, oak moss, labdanum, leather, patchouli, and cedar. Amazing in the spring and summer. Absolutely amazing. And finally, the final Aramis fragrance here, I think. This is Tuscany per Uomo. This is an absolutely, you know, if you're a fan of Italian-style fragrances, if you're a fan of Anise, if you like things like Azzaro per Homme, I would highly encourage you to check out Tuscany per Uomo. If you like things like this Ebene de Balmain, which I did an early impression on, this could also be on this list. Check out Tuscany per Uomo. This is amazing stuff. And the oak moss and the leather and the vintage, it just can't be recreated by the new one. This one, I think, has taken a hit. Maybe one of the hardest of all of the reforms because of that. It's lost a step. It lost that oak moss leather dry down that you get. Sharpness of the anise in the opening in the original is just stunning. And then we're going to go to one of the greatest leather fragrances of all time. Not my favorite, but one of the greatest. Knitze 10, created by Francois Coty. I need to wear this again, actually. It's been a while. It has that leather iris combo I love so much. It has castoreum, which I love, and it has moss in the base. I need to wear this. I need to wear this again. Yeah, this is, you know, Roja's Great Britain could be, I think Roja likes mixing fragrances together, and smelling this from the atomizer, I got some Great Britain vibes, but originally I always thought of Great Britain as a take on Cuir de Russie, but it could be, Great Britain could be like Cuir de Russie meets Knitze 10 meets Cuir Canage. I don't know. I mean, I love both of them. I need to wear this again. It's been a while, but that has a beautiful moss in the base with leather, of course. And one of my favorite honey fragrances of all time, this is Marbert Man. Marbert Man is Raymond Chalain's masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. Honey with freshness of aldehydes, juniper, lavender, basil, moss, patchouli, cedarwood, ambergris, leather, musk, and sandalwood. But the honey, the spices, the woodiness. I mean, if I wanted to wear a honey fragrance in spring or summer, this is probably what I would reach for, honestly. And finally, two left here. We've got Jean Patou Voyager. Yes, another aquatic. That is not really an aquatic. There's no aquatic notes listed here, although you get a tiny touch of dihydromercenol / calone or whatever it is for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes tops. And then Jean Carleo just said, screw you guys, I'm going to make this how I want to make it. And there's bunches of sandalwood, cedarwood, oak moss. It just devolves into a traditional French masculine fragrance. And so they kind of twisted his arm into making an aquatic. And he said, okay, I'll make an aquatic my way. And here you go. And there's real Mysore sandalwood in this. And I got this for $40. So, yes, you know, if you want to wear an aquatic and not wear an aquatic, I gave you some amazing choices here today. And finally, we are going to do a Houbigant fragrance. And it's a fragrance called Duc de Verveines. And Duc de Verveines Extreme. I'm sorry, this is the Extreme version. You can't tell from the box or bottle, but you can tell down below. This is one of the best green fresh fougères I think money can buy. It's so good. And while people may think the gold looks tacky, I love this presentation. I wish they distinguished the Extreme from the regular as far as bottles go. But, I mean, lavender, patchouli, and Oakmoss Absolute in the base. Amazing. Value for money on this fragrance is through the roof, too. And Houbigant, of course, they've got Fougere Royale. They know how to make a Fougere, and this is a amazing take on a Fougere. Okay, let me just push this box out of the way, and then we'll get to box number 2. You guys are probably laughing at that, but damn it, it's true. All right, hold on. Let me try not to spill anything here. Get over there. I hope you guys appreciate what I do for you. You have no idea what a beating taking everything out and putting it back in. Luckily, I have some time. But I won't get into why. But I do have some time this week. Okay, so let's talk about Jazz. Let's talk about YSL Jazz and Jazz Prestige. So Jazz is my favorite of the two, the piano key bottle. I love this fragrance so much. 88. Oh, I need to wear this again soon too. Lavender, cardamom, nutmeg, anise, geranium, iris, jasmine, oak moss, leather, tobacco. All my favorite notes. My favorite from the Jazz line. I think Rich Mitch prefers the Prestige version. This has real Mysore sandalwood in it, but it's more fruity. It's more playful. I like the old school take. You know, that's the way I look at it. This is more fruity and playful to me, the Prestige version. But it also, of course, has oak moss and maybe a little bit of castoreum even in the base with the leather. But there's fruity notes and, you know, it's just a little more playful take is the way I would describe it. And then we've got, from the house of Dana, this is Taboo. Eau de Cologne. Now, Taboo is a oriental spicy fragrance. Most orientals don't have oak moss in the base. All right, most use the benzoin, you know, resinous notes, if you will. This one has the florals, the oriental. It has that clover note that Aramis by Aramis has, which I really love. And it has some dirtiness to it, some civet. You know, if you like fragrances like Obsession by Calvin Klein, check this out. This is amazing stuff. I'm a big fan. I'm glad I have a bottle. One of my favorite citrus fragrances of all time is Gianfranco Fede for Man from 86. Spicy, leathery citrus with tangerine, bergamot, and lemon. But it's so much going on here, but the citruses seem to last forever. And leather, moss, sandalwood, iris. There's this greenness to the fragrance too. There's this fresh juniper green feel. But I mean, if you want to wear something in summer that'll keep you interested, check out Gianfranco Fede for Man. And then, of course, one of my favorite fragrances of all time, made my top 10, Givenchy Gentleman Eau de Toilette in the vintage wraparound bottle. The silver wrap, spicy, leathery patchouli with honey, oak moss. Oh, God, that smell, man. That woke me up. This could be a signature scent for me easily. Easily, this could be a signature scent. Givenchy Gentleman Eau de Toilette. Okay, from one honey frag to another. This is YSL's Koros. This is in the Charles of the Ritz version. But pretty much any version with the silver shoulders I've found is good, okay? Oh, God. This is, I sent some of this to Rachel. Look, and I decanted it. Look at the stain it left around the outside. Look at that. That is absolutely amazing. Top 10 fragrance for me of all time. Honey, oak moss, civet with some, you know, fresh notes as well. There's a freshness of geranium, you know. Sorry, this video has been a real marathon. But if I'm going to do it, damn it, I want to do it right. All right, next is Xarius from the house of Givenchy. This is the vintage bottle. And this is a spicy, woody take. There's so many notes here. I mean, it's built like a fougere, but there's so much more going on. There's mace, there's jasmine, lavender, bergamot, juniper, cinnamon, sandalwood, cypress, amber, balsam, spruce, oak moss, leather, musk, vetiver, classic masculine, you know, fragrance if I've ever seen one, and perfect for the office. And then we've got Alain Delon from 1980, the original, classic, Alain Delon classic, if you will. Spicy, resinous, green, opening, mugwort, lavender, aldehydes, geranium, pine, carnation, cinnamon, honey, oak moss, benzoin, cedarwood, tonka, and amber. All right, now this is one of the my picks for amazing oak moss fragrance, if you will. This is Calvin by Calvin Klein. This fragrance is absolutely amazing. There's this chamomile opening. Oh, there's this spicy freshness of geranium and orange blossom, but it just dives into the sandalwood, the oak moss, vetiver, the best Calvin Klein fragrance, I think, personally. It's my favorite. I mean, it's my favorite to wear. It's so early 80s. And there's a little bit of dirtiness to it. I don't know where that's coming from, but Calvin by Calvin Klein. Amazing stuff. And then we've got Agua Brava. This is a Rosendu Matu and Marcel Carl's creation. This is a vintage bottle. Obviously, I think I got this from Anuj. Bergamot, lavender, sage, juniper, carnation, bay leaf, pine, leather, moss, patchouli, sandalwood, vetiver. They don't say what type of moss, just moss. But this is actually, this feels like it's a real wood cap. And I dropped it. Yes, this feels like it's real wood. I don't know if it is, but it sure as hell feels like it is. So this must be an old bottle if they're using real wood. Anyways, good stuff. Good stuff here by Puig. Classic, masculine, beautiful lavender. Okay, we're on the home stretch. We've got Mitsuko. How could you leave off Mitsuko? One of the best Chypres of all time. Lilac, peach, jasmine, rose, ylang, ambergris, oak moss, vetiver, cinnamon. Amazing stuff. And of course, Vol de Nuit, another Guerlain that uses that oak moss in the base. Galbanum, iris, oak moss, spices, orris, musk, sandalwood. Such a artistic fragrance, you know, especially for the 1930s. You have to give it to Jacques Guerlain. I mean, what a perfumer. And then we've got Teatro alla Scala. Trying to keep myself hyped up here because I feel like my energy is just Teatro alla Scala. What can I say about this that hasn't been said? I mean, this is one of the best Animalic Chypre fragrances ever. Forget man or woman. Oh my god. Beeswax, orris, geranium, benzoin, oak moss, musk, civet. The best use of civet in a Chypre. You know, up there with Diaghilev and all the other amazing Chypres I talked about. You know, Teatro alla Scala is a must sniff. It'll put you on your ass if you're a fragrance lover. This is patchouli in a bottle, but, okay, Krizia Moods Uomo is patchouli in a bottle, but there is oak moss, leather, tonka, ambergris, carnation, ginger. There's a lot more going on. It's like patchouli in a bottle, but on the chassis of a vintage masculine, if that makes sense. Moods Uomo. Okay. Next. I need a pit stop. All right, next we've got Isatis by Givenchy. And Isatis is a Dominique Ropion. And it's one of the most beautiful bottles you'll ever see. Look at this. Like it's just cut out of an iceberg or something. Just beautiful crystal looking top. Obviously it's plastic, even on the vintage. But This is a floral Chypre fragrance, the likes of which you've never smelled. I mean, there's so much going on. I can't even start mentioning it. It's impossible. All I can say is if you're a lover of vintage floral Chypres, Satis de Givenchy in its vintage form is a must. It's an absolute must. Look at the short note breakdown. I mean, beautiful. Okay, and of course, Oakmoss in the base. All right, Paco Rabanne pour Homme, my father's signature scent from 1973. The vintage bottle with the raised R is the one you want, with the honey in the base. I mean, it brings back so many memories. Lavender, rosewood, oak moss, and honey. And speaking of honey, Luciano Pavarotti. Luciano Pavarotti is one of my favorite honey patchouli fragrances of all time. There's also this leathery spiciness to it with the Russian leather in the base that just came out beautifully last time I wore it. And of course, oak moss. And then, two Boss fragrances. One is Boss Number One, one of my favorite honey fragrances of all time. Pissy vibe in the opening. Honey, oak moss, tobacco, orris, and, you know, it's just perfection. I mean, it would be a signature scent for me. This and Antaeus and Koros would be signature scents for me. What does that say about me? That I'd go back to the 80s and wear these as signature scents instead of any of the modern stuff. Okay, Boss Sport is next. Boss Sport is Taget's, Mugwort, Juniper, Carnation, Mace, Clary Sage, Rose, Oak Moss, Sandalwood, Patchouli. It's fresh, it's spicy, it's one of the best sport fragrances money can buy. In fact, it was my favorite sport fragrance until I discovered Antaeus Sport. So, take that for what you will. Okay, we're down to the final stretch for real this time. Next is Capucci pour Homme. And this just came in the haul yesterday, and it has to be included. This is one of the best citrusy, spicy oak moss fragrances money can buy. Lots of lemon, lots of bergamot, lots of lime with some anise, lavender, oak moss in the base. You know, you've got to spray, like Manly Scents wrote in his review, you've got to spray 10,000 times, really. At least 10 sprays of this, and it'll last. Otherwise, it seems really ethereal, really light. Kind of like it acts like Eau Sauvage does on my skin. But if you overspray, it's a fun fragrance to wear. And one you do not need to overspray is Punjab by the house of Capucci. Now, Punjab came out in 79. Capucci pour Homme came out in 67. And yeah, Punjab is that woody, spicy smell of the late 70s. It's just like everything's blended together into this leathery, mossy, piney, balsam fir, frankincense, huge oak moss in the base here. Maybe the biggest oak moss fragrance of all time. I'm going to put this as one of the ones to really go check out if you want to check out a oak moss heavy fragrance. It's Art de Capucci. And Art de Capucci, I've got like 5 of these. So these are 10 ml decants. And I've got like 5. So there you have it. There's the little decant. Are these 10 ml? Shit, I don't even know now. What are these? Yeah, they're 10 mls. And this is oak moss in a bottle. This is spicy oak moss, loads of oak moss, wears beautifully in the rain, you know, stuff like that. Leather in the base, oak moss in the base. If you really, really love oak moss, check out Art de Capucci. It's probably one of the best representations of oak moss. And then we are down to a couple. We're down to a couple few. Let me put this back together. Okay, Next is Lagerfeld Cologne. Lagerfeld Cologne is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. Tobacco, orris, you know, that powdery orange vibe. It smells like the juice looks, but with just, you know, that masculine undertone. Oakmoss, tobacco, vanilla, amber. That came out in '78. In 1990, they released Photo from the House of Lagerfeld, which is more like an aldehydic, honey, benzoin, sandalwood, fresher fragrance. You know, woody and fresh. But there is, of course, oak moss in the base to make it last. And, okay, these last three are going to be oak moss top picks, okay? So if you want to just try some of the ones I mentioned, like Art de Capucci, like Quorum, like Chypre Siam, these last three are on the list. Francesco Smalto Porome. This is spicy Italian oak moss in a bottle. Anise, lavender, cyclamen, patchouli, oak moss, leather. It turns into this smoky, spicy oak moss, leathery fragrance that is all Italian. One of the best oak moss fragrances money can buy. And from one great oak moss to another, this is Van Cleef and Arpels Sar. Sar is one of the top fougere fragrances, if you will. It's up there. It's up there with Gucci Nobile and all that good stuff. Green, spicy, Artemisia, tarragon, rosemary, a little bit of castoreum, and of course tons of oak moss in the base. Patchouli, vetiver, a little bit of leather. I mean, look at the color of the bottle. It's just perfect. Sar. And finally, the pick I saved for last, because the oak moss and the leather in the base of this is just, I mean, you can almost smell it even from the cap, just the pop that the oak moss gives this fragrance. And it's vintage Azure by the house of Estee Lauder. Make sure you get the bottle that looks like this. Look at the bottle shape. Look at where the gold comes down to. Get the one that looks exactly like this. Don't get the one that doesn't have the gold here. Get the one that looks exactly like this, and you will be a happy camper. It's a leather Chypre, the likes of which you've never smelled, okay? It's probably closest to Cabochard, which also could have been on this list. Aramis from '64. This is from '69, and it was made for women. And I think I like this even more than Aramis. It's just, it might be the most perfect leather Chypre I've ever smelled. Seriously. You know, it is one of the best value for monies you can buy. I don't think you can buy Perfumery any higher quality than this. You know, if you smell this and you don't like this, maybe Perfume's not for you. It is, oh God. You know, everything about the fragrance is done to perfection. To absolute perfection. And, you know, the oak moss in the base just does something to this fragrance. It highlights every little part, you know, it just shines a spotlight on every little piece, the leather, anything you know, any part of the fragrance you can think of, the green Artemisia opening, the orris, the vetiver, the moss, I mean, it just, everything is just sparkling and highlighted, and it's just gorgeous. So there you have it. There's my insane hour and 40-minute video. I'm never doing that again, ever. I'm just saying it right now. I'm glad it's over, but my God, what was I thinking? Please do let me know what you think about the video below. Let me know what you think on the, this is not a top 10 oak moss. Let me know what your favorite oak moss fragrances are. And I'm too tired to say like and subscribe, so I'm going to say cheers, guys. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you again tomorrow with another video. Bye now.